Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Make Life Less Taxing podcast, the show where we uncover what really creates freedom in life and business, and we'll explore stories of those who've learned how to build wealth with purpose.
Welcome back to the Make Life Less Taxing podcast. Today, I'm joined by Kristy Barber, founder of Kristy Barber Consulting. She helps growth-minded entrepreneurs make sense of their numbers and the systems behind them. Kristy, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Hey, great to have you on. Now, Kristy, can you share a bit more about who you are and what is the work that you do?
Yeah, so I come from an accounting background, kind of started that route from day one, even as young as in high school, worked in an accounting firm and kind of went from there. But my business predominantly helps small businesses up to about 20 million build out their infrastructure of accounting. So do you have the right systems and processes in place? Are your numbers making sense? Can you trust them? Can you make decisions from them? And so it's a really fun way to kind of marry in finance and operations, technology, all the things that I love in one place.
Sounds really exciting if you love
Yes.
numbers. If you
Yes,
don't,
exactly. That's the thing.
yeah. Now, if you could sum up in maybe one or two sentences, what is the movement? Like, is there a movement behind what you're doing? What's kind of the passion behind that?
Yeah, so the big movement behind it is numbers always seem to be scary for founders and business owners at times, especially in the very beginning stages of the company. And I want people to see that the numbers have a life behind them and they have a story to tell. And I want business owners to be familiar enough with what's going on so that if a CFO or their bookkeeper or whomever else speaks to it, that they have the knowledge to understand what's going on and see the story that their numbers are telling them.
So, to that point, I think a lot of business owners feel overwhelmed with numbers. Like, who I don't want to say who love numbers because obviously there are people like yourself that
There are a
do, which
few,
is
yes.
awesome because we definitely need it. But when somebody comes to you, what's usually going on behind the scenes? Because put it that way, I'm in the financial business. I always say it's never about the numbers. There is a
Mm-mm.
story behind that. So what's happening usually with the people that you have, that you help?
What I've seen with the people that I help is that there are two sides of it. You do have some founders and business owners that are very, very familiar with numbers, and they just need some additional clarification and to make things run a little bit smoother. However, the other business owner operators that come in are the dreamers, and they're the ones with this great idea, and they're pushing really hard to get their products sold. And then it comes down to the numbers and reports and getting information about, what are these expenses for? And I had one of my clients tell me one time, I hate all of this. Can you just do it? I just want to sell. I'm like, okay, fair. Yes, because you're really good at that. But you need to understand this because it's going to help you sell. If we understand your margins and all of these things, and I know it's overwhelming, that's not your specialty. It's not where your background came from. But if you know this, now your sales really are worth that much more. And so there's some education on it and making sure that it's not overwhelming and it's little pockets of it along the way so that the business owner can kind of take it in. I would say other times I have business owners that are, large amounts of debt that are in there hanging by a string trying to keep their business going and just don't know what else to do. And it's, coming in more from a strategic point of view to see, all right, what's going on? What can we do to kind of point the company in the right direction?
Yeah, I think you bring a great point. One of the coaches, when I got into coaching, has always talked about this from the perspective of there's two sides of any business, right?
Mhm.
And there is and he was in coaching and he was coaching other coaches, but he says there is the coaching of, the business of coaching, the coaching business, and then there's the business of the coaching business, right? That's
Right.
the business side of things. And everybody loves the coaching side, or for financial advisors, they love the advising side of things,
Mhm.
but they don't focus on the business side. And it's like, you can have one without the other. And I
Yeah.
think what you just mentioned, that, yeah, it is so important. And what most people don't realize, that both of those sides are actually complementing each other.
Mhm.
And if you understand both of them, and again, most business owners, they don't need to go out there and crunch their own numbers or do the numbers themselves, but they need to have an idea of what's going on with it because that's going to help them with the planning and with the strategic side of things, what they're doing on there. So you bring a great point. But when someone comes to you and they don't even know where to start, how do you help them to kind of begin making sense of what's working and what's not?
So it starts out with just more of an evaluation. Let's dig into your books. Let's kind of get an understanding of how things are flowing, how they're looking, and this is where you can begin to spot some minor changes. I always call it the low hanging fruit, like
Hmm.
easy wins that if you implemented them that day, you would already see change. And a good example of that would be with a client I started working with a couple weeks ago. Is when looking at their financials right out the gate, they were set up from a tax perspective, not an operational. So
Hmm.
if you're looking at things of how to run your business, you have no clue what's going on, but they were set up so the CPA could essentially very easily just put things in the right boxes, file the tax return and go. And that was one thing that, hey, we need to change the layout of your profit and loss statement so that you can see what are your cost of goods sold, what what are your material costs, all of these things, because I think there's little things in there depending on the types of business that get forgotten, and those need to be implemented in there. So starting out with this, kind of just an analysis, what's going on, and then from there looking into putting together more of a plan that they would fall into that a lot of my clients do, which is, over 90 days they come in, we're going through, we're changing a lot of things with just the layout. We're looking at how maybe your accounts receivable or your accounts payable departments it should be running, whether that's, one person doing it all or you got a team doing it. Where are those handoff points? And then being able at the end of it that you have a full system and process in place that now you can go and you can make wise decisions from all the work we've done over the last 90 days.
Yeah, I think you bring a great point from the perspective of almost as if money and business and really everything we're doing has its own personalities, and there are different
Yeah.
personalities. And what it sounds like when you come in there, you don't know specifically what's going on, but fairly quickly you can assess where
Mhm.
that person is and really kind of what is happening as it is happening. And then you know kind of where to go. But if somebody doesn't really understand any of that stuff, it kind of
Yeah,
all
you don't
looks.
know where to go. It's kinda like when you go to the doctor's office and you're like, "I feel sick." And they're like, "Okay," and then they start asking you, questions to diagnose you, or you take your car and you're like, "Hey, it makes this sound," and that's about all you know. And it's the same thing with numbers. You have to diagnose and see where is the pain coming from and how do we fix that, not just put a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah. Well, there was always there was the lead indicators and the lag indicators, and often when I
Mhm.
work with advisors, they all say, "Hey, I just want to make more money," and I'm like, going, "Well, yeah.
Right?
So how do you make more money?" "Well, I need to make more sales." I'm like, "Yeah, but you need to understand, sales is a result of a whole bunch of other stuff that happens
Mhm.
before, because sales is a lag indicator that happens as a result. You need to focus on the lead indicators, and I think what you're mentioning with the numbers, yeah, I mean, if you're not making enough money, they're usually the numbers are going to tell you what's going on, and then you can go and make
Mhm.
a decision. But if you don't know your numbers, that's going to be very difficult to do anything about that.
Or even the lag times too. How many times do you see, "Hey, we make a lot of money, but
Yeah.
it's 60, 90 plus days before a payment gets received." And so now you're trying to balance your company on credit cards and lines of credit before these big payments come in. And so that causes a lot of strain on small businesses when you're trying to float along until those payments come in.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you talk a lot about kind of simplifying to scale. In your experience, where do most business owners, entrepreneurs make things more complex than they really need to be?
I think sometimes I see is I don't know, actually. I go back and forth on this. I think they try to make things complex by maybe implementing too many steps before they're ready for it, thinking that they're a $100 million company when they're doing $2 million.
Mm.
And they have all these things in there that just make it harder for their team or even themselves to keep the business pointed in the right direction. And then that starts causing, a whole bunch of after effects of Well, now we're short on money because we've been paying for all of these systems that we don't use today, but we might use it. Or we
Yeah.
hired all of these people because, we might need them, but we don't need them yet. And so they're not paying for their own salaries. And it's just that growing too quickly, or having the mindset that you have to be perfect day one with how your business is set up and running, which is such a lie. Just go and build as you go. And I know there's going to be a lot of people that push back against that, because there's some people like, you got to have that solid business plan, you got to have this and that. And I'm like, but what if that's not what your clients fully want, and you're pivoting all along the way until you build something that's exactly what they want?
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm always pushing my own clients of, let's not get it all perfect today. Let's, test the waters. Let's throw things out there. Let's see how that works. And that'll save them, in my opinion, it saves a lot of time and resources by going that route, instead of implementing all of these things that your target audience may not even want.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge, from what you said is, we're thinking we're making it simpler by
Mhm.
planning ahead, by actually going too far. Kind of overcomplicating it from that perspective. And I
And then you
think
gotta
this is what,
undo it all too.
yeah.
Sometimes if you built too far ahead and that's not the direction your business is going, now you gotta go unplug everything you've built and plug it all back in a different way.
Yeah, no, that's it's a great point. And again, the numbers are very quickly. You can start seeing that with the numbers where where things are happening. Now, what's a moment in your own work where you saw a business to really go from where they were scattered kind of all over the place, and they really streamlined? And what really shifted? What was kind of the difference that was made?
I think there was one client last year that is a really cool one, because they were running on Excel. A really large organization still running on Excel, which to me was very surprising how well they were still doing just off that. But the owners had a really good understanding of their numbers. And so the lack of accounting system didn't hurt them necessarily as much as it does other businesses. They just didn't have all the details to make other decisions. So once I got them set up on QuickBooks and we brought in some other ancillary software to get the data in there, they're an e-commerce company. And so this way we could really track what their true cost of goods sold was. And that really helped them when they're looking at margins, because they had a pretty good idea, because the Excel spreadsheets they had built were pretty complex. But it was different to be able to look at it in a system, run a report on a weekly basis, and have very true numbers of what was going on. And then it allowed them to really take the company in a I don't know, kinda take it more by the reins and say, "All right, we're going this route." And it was cool to see. And then they ended up, in the process, they sold their business actually after we did all of this work. So that was even cooler to see, is they're like, "Hey, you know what? We actually hit all the goals we wanted to hit. We got this guy that has been knocking at our door for some time, and we're ready to go."
Yeah, I think you bring a great point, and I think when we work with advisors, often we tell them they're literally sitting on acres of diamonds, right?
Mhm.
They're sitting on all of these opportunities. I think the biggest opportunities in any business are all of the unconverted opportunities that they have, because often especially I see this with advisors. They're always thinking, I just need more leads. I need more people. I need
Yep.
to talk to more people. And they forget that they've already built all of these assets. And often when we work with advisors, we kind of try to go back. And I feel like you're kind of doing the same thing. You're like going, hey, you know what? And I've heard somebody say this, that it's never an income problem. It's more of like a spend problem, or where the numbers go, right?
Mhm.
And I think if people really sit down and understand their numbers, they might feel like, no, we just need more money coming in. And every business could always use
Every
more money,
business wants that.
but
Yeah.
if you're bringing more money, and kind of, the best illustration is a bucket, right? So if you got a
Mhm.
bucket and you keep on pouring more in, but there are like big gaping holes in the bucket, and as fast as you're pouring it in, it's pouring out, you're not going to go and get ahead.
Yep.
And what I feel like what you do with individuals, going like, well, hold on, let's plug up the holes first,
Mhm.
because that's going to help the bucket to get filled up. And then you can actually make better informed decision to move forward.
Yeah. Exactly. And to your point with the bucket thing, I think that's a lot of problems with a lot of people. One thing I was talking about with somebody I guess it was a couple weeks ago now, is just the correlation between how you manage your personal finances and how that bleeds into how you manage your business's finances. And if you're pretty loose and no budgets and hey, don't mind having debt and lots of credit card debt, all of those on a personal level, I've seen that affect the business and it becomes the exact same way. And then the owner starts using the business as a personal ATM to go pay personal bills because they can't get that under control.
Yeah.
And so it's been really interesting. I said in a podcast a while back and tagged Dave Ramsey in it. I was like, hey, Dave, I need you to come have a conversation with me about this and see, what you've seen from the personal level and how this correlates to the business because I see a big part of that. And even with those types of clients that I do work with, it's educating them from a different perspective
Yeah.
and a different way because they can easily get defensive because you know how it is when you're shown yourself in a mirror, you're like, "Oh, wait a second. I don't wanna look at this. I don't wanna deal with it." And it kinda comes to the same thing with the financial part of it as, oh, it's like you calling somebody's baby ugly is what I say, and they're like, "Oh, I don't
Yeah.
wanna deal with this. I don't want somebody telling me this. I don't like this."
Well, the worst
But
part is
I
that numbers do not lie, right?
They
So they
don't
can't
lie,
study the
and that's the
numbers. The numbers
problem
are
where
numbers.
people they want them to at times.
Yeah. No, exactly. But they can't
Yeah.
do anything about it, right? No.
No,
I mean, listen, if you
not
got
at
an ugly
all.
baby, you can say, hey, it's going to grow up. Well, listen, when you got bad numbers, they're not going to fix themselves, right?
No.
So,
And it's like, what can you do to make them look better and to also have a good plan in place so you're not living paycheck to paycheck or you're not robbing Peter to pay Paul and all of those ways.
yeah. Well, listen, part of my movement is keep what is yours and break free from the traditional financial systems. And what you're talking about too is break free from the, traditional way you're doing things. Because often people, as you mentioned, if your personal finance is going to be a mess, chances are your business is also
Yeah.
going to be a mess, right? And there is a lot of great resources out there that it's kind of like, hey, you know what, you should really be running your personal finances the way you go and run your business, right? There's got to be some checks and balances. There's got to
Mhm.
be some rules or boundaries that you need to go and set. And unfortunately, most of us, including me, being in the financial industry, calling myself a recovering CFP, my money stories, my relationship with money was very toxic because of my past, because of what happened with my family and everything. And that kind of was, brought over. And I've had to spend a lot of time to kind of reprogram my way of thinking,
Right.
how I'm looking at it. And I'm still working on it. Like
It's
it's
not
work in
easy.
progress. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not easy to do, and I think, good for you for putting the work and knowing that that is, and so many people I don't know sometimes if they have the grit to do that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just allowing yourself to understand that, hey, it's okay. It is what it
Mhm.
is, right?
Yep.
You can go back, you can change it, but moving forward, right, you can go and change. Again, name of the podcast, Make Life Less Taxing. And I always say it's not about the money. It's the money is part of it, but like our lives are becoming so much taxing with everything that's happening around
Yeah.
all of areas of our life. Like there is so much more stress on our
Mhm.
lives these days, let alone on our finances, that yeah, we just need to go and break free from, from that. So and a lot of the work that you do is with businesses, that basically are in the past, they've kind of started, but they're not quite at that enterprise level. What is it that they kind of missed and that ends up costing them a lot? And I think you kind of mentioned on that where they're maybe trying to act like that big enterprise where they're not
Mhm.
there. Are there some other things that you notice that are affecting them?
I think sometimes it's hiring people because you think you need to, not because you need them.
Yeah.
Because it looks better to say, "Hey, I have a team," or these things, but the work isn't necessarily there yet, and I had a client, and this came up because I had a client about 4 years ago do this that hired 2 people right away because, the owner, he didn't want to have to do all the daily work, which totally fine, but he still wanted to be paid a lot of money every month, but now there wasn't the money to do that because the money's going to these employees, and he couldn't understand why that was a problem. And it was just education on there being like, well, now all the work that you brought in sales wise, these people are going out and delivering. It's not you anymore. And so in order to pay yourself, these people need to go generate their own sales as well. And they need to do about 3 times what their salary is. And then you'll start getting back to where you were of, taking a paycheck that you wanted. And so I think there's things like that. I also think that, and this is not a downside to anybody because I'm guilty of it as well, is when we're too kind, we give away too much
Mm.
also.
Oh man, are you
Oh,
talking to me? Listen, in the last 2 years, we kind of shifted the business, what we're doing, and kind of with
yeah.
the movement and everything. I've had like 3 employees that I think all 3 of them at different times work. I was paying them for at least 6 months more than I should have, and it
Mhm.
was hard because you do build that relationship with them, right? Like they're
You
kind of part of
do.
the family and all of that stuff. But
Yeah.
I think I can completely identify with that, and it's hard. And again, uh, yeah, it's and listen, I called every financial advisor, and I was one accidental business owners because, like I said, I wanted to help with the finance, and then what?
Mhm.
I've got to go and run a business? No, 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 somebody else should be doing that. No, no, I've got to go and do that. And when it
Yeah.
comes down to hiring staff and team members and all that stuff, that's where it becomes a lot more personal and not just
Mhm.
about the numbers. And I think this is where you got to be a little bit more like a business owner to go and let them go. But yeah, that was actually, speaking of that, those were probably the hardest conversations I've had to had, where I had to go
Yeah.
like, no, you know what, this is just not working out, and because we're taking a different direction, we got to let you
Mhm.
go. Because when you start, everybody's so optimistic, everything's going
Always.
so well, and I think, well, I think part of it is we kind of feel like we're failing them, right? So we kind of
Mhm.
take that responsibility, and that's what it was for me. And I was kind of keeping it as long. And I actually, one of my VA actually gave me a compliment, and I'm going to take it as a compliment. She goes like, Daniel, do you remember like last year you had such a hard time just every day stressing out, trying to come up with something for me to do? And now, like, you don't do that anymore? And I'm like going, yeah, I know. And it was like giving up a lot of the things that I was doing, like even checking my
Mm.
emails and all of that stuff. And it's a mindset thing, right? Like
It
it's not just
is.
start with the numbers, but it's more about, are you able to kind of give all of that stuff up? And now I'm thinking like, just have a meeting in the morning, going like, hey, do you need something? No. Hey, I'm working on all this stuff. Perfect. Let's have a meeting later on. And things are working, where a year ago I was stressing out. And this is what happened with all of those team members that I had, or those employees. Every day, literally, I spent half the day just trying to come up for work to do for these people
Yeah.
that deep down I knew that I should have let them go. So, you bring an excellent point on that.
Yeah. But it is hard because, to your point too, it's like you develop a great relationship with them. They're part of the business. And you want to see them grow and, be a part of it for the long term. But then sometimes it just happens where it's not the right fit, or the company goes a different direction. The skill set doesn't align anymore. And what does that look
Mm.
like? And I think, it can be kind of detrimental to the business from a financial point of view because you're paying longer than you should, and maybe money's not coming in to balance that off. But then also on the other side, I had a client that, sh she took care of her employees almost too well.
Mm.
Anything they wanted, they got, and it was always paid for. And I was like, okay, well, you pay them X per year is their salary, but you also give them, all of this over here. So you're really paying like another 25% of their salary in these services. Do you realize that? Because if they're delivering, awesome. But if they're
Yeah.
not, then here's a gap. And I think that's hard too, because people, I think there's a little bit of that. I don't know if it's a scarcity mindset or what you've seen is the newer generation and just different generations, they work very differently. Some generations are very lazy and they want you to pay them, 6 figures because they showed up to work and they want the trophy for it.
Yeah.
Others are you working so hard that you're like, please go home. You need to spend time with your family.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really interesting to see how the different generations of business owners take care of their employees, but also ones that kind of let them get away with more than they should. And the reason I bring that up too is going back to the same client is there's an employee that is paid 6 figures and I would say probably delivers maybe $30,000 less
Mm.
of work than what they're paid. And when I run numbers and all these things to show it, the owner doesn't wanna believe it because it's her friend.
Yeah.
But there's no way they would do. So I think there's things that are tough also as being a business owner, and when you're looking at the numbers and the KPIs that are tied to people that you've hired, it how do you deal with the emotional component of that?
Yeah. Especially when you hire people that are like family, friends, or somebody like that,
Yeah.
it just becomes really difficult. I've been in that situation where,
Mhm.
I had to make the decision. It's like, okay, this is not working anymore, right? We just got to go and move on and make those changes. So
Mhm.
yeah, no, that's again, this is where it gets, it's about numbers, but at the end, it's an
Yep.
emotional thing, right? So it's
Mhm.
never, it becomes a little bit more challenging.
Yeah.
Now, what's one outdated belief or mindset about how business owners really should be running their business that you're on a mission to change? Like there is a movement. What you're building. What
Mhm.
is that?
My whole movement that I want the business owner to be fully educated. I think in the past it's always been, well, your first hire should be, your CPA, your bookkeeper, your CFO. Sure, those are all good. You need those to probably do the background work because it's not usually it's not the owner's skill set. But you need to understand exactly what they're telling you because too many founders or owners, whatever, they get taken advantage of by those people. And I've seen ones where the financial team is embezzling money and the owner didn't have any idea because they were so far removed from what was going on there. And they just took the CFO's word for truth that, oh, well, it hasn't been a great month. We did this. Okay, sounds good. So I want business owners to be empowered by that so that if they do see things that seem off or whatnot going on, that they can trust the numbers that are being shown to them and they can make decisions from there. And also it helps when they get down to, doing their tax return and things like that. When the CPA comes back at them, they can say, hey, wait a second. No, we actually only did XYZ. And they can, kind of double check against the CPA as well.
Yeah, I think what you brought up a great point, and I mean, giving up the control around money and all that, that's probably one of the hardest things for any business
Hmm.
owner to do. But then, yeah, going completely to the other side where you don't have any control over that. I'm sure there's many businesses that unfortunately have gone out of business because, yeah, somebody else really took advantage of them, and
Hmm.
they just did not have the oversight for that. So this is again where it comes down to. It's really important for that business owner to have an understanding. They don't need to do all of the work, but they need to have an understanding of the numbers and what's going on. Otherwise, somebody will definitely go and take advantage of them
Hmm.
because they have that trust.
Yeah.
So,
And
so-
and also with all of that, I wanna make numbers fun. I think
mm,
as a whole, people have been told, "Oh, it's hard. Leave that to somebody else where it's, easy for them to do." But my thing is, and my grandpa told me this, if you understand numbers, you're worth gold because
mm.
a lot of people don't know how to read them. And that's what I want every business owner to understand is there's so much weight that you carry when you do know these in and out. That you should be able to have a conversation, call somebody and say, "Hey, you know what? What'd you do, last week or last month in sales?" And you should be able to rattle it off.
Well, I think you bring a great point, and I remember that often if you don't know your numbers, not knowing
Mhm.
is usually way worse because hey, listen, we're human beings, and we have an incredible way of embellishing everything in our minds.
Mhm.
So when we think things are bad, we make them in our minds even worse. And when
Oh,
you don't
yeah.
know where the numbers are at, and I've had that when I was a financial advisor, more often, what would happen if we actually go and look at the numbers? They go like, oh, it's a lot better than I thought. And living with that fear that it's really bad is actually
Mhm.
even worse because again, that's where make life less taxing, right? Like that's
Yeah.
taxing mentally when you don't really know the numbers. And
Mhm.
it's a matter of like often just knowing the numbers actually gives you a lot of freedom, but at least you know what's going on. And I know a lot of people like, no, I don't want to look at it. I don't want to think about it. I just want to
Mhm.
go out there and do things kind of like the ostrich in the sand, right? Just shove the hand in the sand and hoping that it goes away. And it's like, no, it's not going to go away, but often, if you know, it actually you now know. Like it's
You
not good
do.
or bad. It's just, it is what it is. And
Mm,
often it will be a lot better for that individual because they will at least know what's going on and they don't need to have that extra stress of not knowing.
mhm. Or even on the flip side of that, you're like, "Oh, the company's doing great. So and so told me it's doing great." And then you
Mm,
look at it yourself and think, "Oh, wait a second. No, this is not doing great. This is not in alignment with, the numbers or whatever that you were maybe looking for yourself to have with the
yeah.
business."
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, no, again, works on both sides now. When
Mm.
something's not working in a business, how do you help people to kind of figure out what's really causing it, not just what's showing up on the surface? Because as we talked about, usually the issues, the numbers are not the issues, but the numbers is
Mhm.
what you see. What do you kind of see? What's showing up below the surface?
So I think that comes from doing more of an in-depth. I like to do workshops and maybe spend a couple hours with the department, and we go through what is the process that you're doing today. And with that, I'm able to a lot of times uncover pain points. Sometimes right away people won't say it and you'll be like, "Oh, how this process right here and you seem to be doing this, this and this." "Oh, yeah, that works." And then pretty soon they're like, "Well, actually, it's this, this, and there's pain here, and then I have to go, hand key this in manually, but then I also have to do it over here because this doesn't work." And so when you get people in a more comfortable setting and allow them to really speak to what they're doing, I've been able to uncover a lot of things that then point to what the root cause is, because most times when people come to me and they have an issue or whatever, it's not the root cause, it's a symptom
Hmm,
of something else, and they don't quite see yet what that's causing. And so we sit in, and sometimes these are a day long, sometimes they're 2 days long depending on how big the organization is, but you find out a lot from those and able to redraw maybe the workflow that they need to use and then put steps into how are we going to fix some of the things that we're seeing going forward.
yeah, well, it's really, it's all about those individuals having clarity of what's happening. So,
Yeah.
what does financial clarity mean to you, and why does it matter beyond just the numbers?
I think it's more important beyond the numbers in the fact that yes, you need to know what they are, but you also need to believe in them. And I think when you have clarity, a lot of times when you have clarity, it's because you come to a point where you believe in what you're going to do. And it paints that path of, oh, I know where I'm going now because whatever tools I'm using, I believe in them. I know it can get me to where I need to go. And I know that's at least what it's been for me. I can look at different models and say, hey, I could go in this direction. The company could grow X. But if I'm not sold on the direction I wanna go or the offer that I wanna send or whatnot, that doesn't give me clarity of what next step to take. And so I think with a lot of businesses, once they do have a clear picture and the numbers align with that, um, then you do have financial clarity because you have a workflow that you believe in. You know that it's gonna give you the decisions that you or give you data to make the decisions that you know are accurate,
Hmm.
and that comes from building in the background to make sure your data is consistent, that you trust everything that's coming in and adding to what you would pull to make a decision
Yeah. Now,
in
earlier you said,
a long-winded way.
yeah, no, 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 it's perfect. Listen, earlier you mentioned something, helping people to make numbers fun again.
Mhm.
Can you expand on that a little bit more? Because that's
Yeah.
something that, like I said, we look at numbers, and again, numbers are neither good or bad; they're just numbers, right?
Mhm.
So, can you expand on that? What do you mean by
Yeah.
that?
So to me, it should be exciting or at least like some anticipation when you open and look at your profit and loss statement or your cash flow and be like, "Oh, hey, yeah, I know how to read this and it's interesting to me now." It could be you don't really love it still, but at least it makes sense and you want to go look at it enough on a weekly basis or whatnot to be able to help use as a tool to steer the company along the way. And I think that's where making numbers fun is you want to go see what they're telling you. It's kind of like, going to hang out with friends. You're like, "Oh, I want to understand how everybody's doing and what's going on." And I want numbers to kind of be that where they become more of a team player for people versus this, oh, numbers. I don't want to look at it. I just want to walk blindly.
Well, yeah, it's always hard to drive a car with with
Yep.
rear mirror, right? Like looking backwards, but it is important to go and move forward when it comes down to numbers, right? Because the
Mhm.
numbers can tell you, right? Success leaves clues. Well, if success leaves clues, unsuccess also leaves clues. And again, as
Yes.
we're talking about the numbers, right? Really, they are a lag indicator. Right?
Mhm.
Like the numbers don't just show up, right? Something actions had to happen before, and the numbers is just like reporting on what actually happened and how it went. And if somebody knows what the numbers are, and if they don't like them, well, figure out exactly where things have gone wrong by looking backwards and figure out exactly
Mhm.
what maybe needs to change. Because I think a lot of people, and again, this is where keep what is yours and break free. I think a lot of us get into this rut where we just keep on
Yeah.
doing the same thing over and over again. It's the definition of insanity, right? We're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And at the beginning of the year, we've just turned into 2026. Everybody's all excited. There's all of these
Uh-huh.
goals, all of these
New
things that we want to
goals.
do, right?
Yeah.
But like, are you actually checking? Are you on track? Are you off track?
Mhm.
Well, if you're off track, how do you get there? And I think this is
Mhm.
the hardest thing for a lot of people is when they don't like the numbers, they don't like to look at them, and then they get to the end of the year going like, how did this happen? How come we
Yeah.
didn't hit the goals? Well,
The
hold
whole
on.
train fell off the tracks and like, "Well, why didn't anybody tell me that?" Then they're like, "Well, the numbers told you this about 6 months ago. You just didn't wanna believe it."
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
exactly. So, and again, I think this is where what you're mentioning, numbers are just numbers. If you can go and make it fun and it actually means something. I know one of the things, one of the coaches actually was Rich Littman that I mentioned before, talking about the coaching business and all that. But he called it the 90-day money game.
Hmm.
And what he would do, he would literally go and draw like a thermometer on the wall, and then he would be measuring how much money he's making, right? Even simple things like that make it a little bit more fun because it makes it a little bit
Yeah.
more visual, right? Like when we look at numbers, yeah, you know what, they're numbers, right? Like
Mhm.
they're not that exciting, but you can do something with that, or even the reporting and things like that, where now you can go and turn it a little bit more into a game. And
Mhm.
and like I said, what he would do, and what was interesting with his 90-day money game, obviously the goal was to go and make sales, right? To go and make
Okay.
money. But what he was tracking, not the lag indicator, he was tracking the first indicators were like, okay, how many proposals did you make? So he basically say, hey, if you want to go and make $100,000, right, you need to go and make $400,000 worth of
Mhm.
proposals or $500,000 worth of proposals. And the lead indicator is like, hey, you go and do $500,000 worth of proposals, you pretty well are guaranteed to make $100,000. I mean, unless you're
Yeah.
really bad and all that stuff, but you know so it's all of those leading in activities that you have to make, right, doing all of the proposals that are going to lead into the sales. But if you're going to go and do $100,000 worth of proposals and you're expecting to make $100,000
Yeah,
at
it's
the end
not
of the
gonna
year,
happen normally.
good luck. It's not going to happen. Yeah,
Mm.
half if you're lucky,
Mhm.
right? From that perspective, because again, that's the other thing where most people think that they're, oh, my closing rate is 90%.
You're
No,
like,
it's not.
"Okay."
you know. So again, to me, I think what I'm hearing you say, it's all about that. So it's the numbers should be exciting because yeah, I mean, it's exciting to go and make money. And again, I think
It
there's a lot of
is.
wealth. I think the reason people don't achieve the goals they want to achieve is because yeah, they don't plan for it and they start ignoring the things, and they try to focus on the maybe the problem instead of the symptoms, like what is
Mhm.
going on a little bit deeper. Why did this actually happen, right? And
Right. Yeah.
so
And I don't know if you've ever read, there's a book called The Great Game of Business by Jack Slack. It is like one of my favorite business books. I had to read it in grad school. But essentially, this guy, comes in, takes over a business, and they had a huge issue with warehouse injuries.
mm,
And so OSHA was there all the time, penalizing them and things like that. And he turned that number into a fun game of how long can we go without having a
right,
claim? All right, we made it this long. All right, awesome. We get it to this and this, and okay, if we hit this number, let's throw a huge party. We're gonna close down the business early that day. We're doing this or that. And he got to a point where he really changed people's perspectives on
Mm.
safety out in the warehouse. And I think one thing that was interesting about him too is he had open books. So even being a privately owned company, every person that worked in the company got to see the financials and understand how they worked. So he was big on educating, no matter if you're the janitor or you're the president of the company, you need to understand what our financials are telling us and the way that the business is going.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great story because it shows the involvement of everybody. Like everybody wants to
Mhm.
help right now. Everybody's working as
Yeah.
a as a team and going and turning into uh a chain. I mean, that's it's one of the things I think I shared with you that I go cold plunging. I'm on my day what is it,
Yeah.
82 I think right now, that that have gone and done that. And there is a certain part of it going like, oh, I can't miss out on a day because I'm going to break the chain, right? So again, that's taking numbers, right?
Mhm.
Which kind of mentioned
And make
in
it
there, and
fun.
making it a little bit more fun because you're
Mhm.
giving a bit more of a story, but you can go in. Again, it really comes down to is you're just giving more attention to the numbers when you
Yeah.
make it more fun. And I think the
Mhm.
reason people struggle or have issues with their numbers or accounting and all that stuff is because they're just not paying attention to it, or they're thinking somebody else is going to be able to go and
Yeah.
handle it. And again, that doesn't really help anybody because you need to have an oversight and know exactly what's going on.
Mhm. You do. And that's, I think, maybe the fun part too is what is the story? And I love to read, and I think that's what makes the number part of it fun too. I'm like, "Ooh, well, what's the story this month?" Or "What's the story that we're forecasting that we want to see?" Or looking in the rearview mirror, "What did we learn? How can we change things?" All of that.
Yeah. No, that's exactly so. Listen, if someone's feeling stuck and unsure where to even start, what's one small step that you suggest that they take?
I would say if you're feeling stuck, my biggest thing is always have a cash flow statement that you build out and make that over 13 weeks and track on a weekly basis all your cash coming in, your cash going out. And that is the easiest way to start understanding how your numbers are working. And then from there you can graduate into other parts, other components of it. But that has always been a place where I point people because a lot of small business owners don't have one. And by having that, some additional responsibility comes in when you're seeing on a weekly basis, oh, wow, a lot of money went out, nothing came in.
Mm.
And then I'm starting to see trends. Maybe it's every 3 weeks that income comes in and whatnot, but these all seem to consistently go out of the expenses. Is there a way that I can negotiate with vendors or whatnot to increase terms and a multitude of other things? But that is the best way to start.
Yeah, what you don't track, you can improve, right? So
Exactly.
everything, especially with numbers, it's fairly easy to track, right?
Hmm.
So that would be important. That's a
Yeah.
great tip.
And they're easy to make.
Yeah.
And if you have issues with it, AI can help you build one too, but you can also just easily extract the data out of QuickBooks and build from there. So yeah.
Yeah. Again, this is where it comes down to is even tracking it. Do a thermometer or something.
Mhm.
Actually, when I went in and played that game, I took a map and I filled out the map because it was like, hey, the reward was going to be a trip, right? So
Yeah.
there's all sorts of things that somebody can do to make it a little bit more exciting and looking forward to it. I think that's the motivation, right?
Mhm.
Like one of my coaches says, Daniel, human beings do things only for one reason, because they want to,
Mhm.
right? And if you can figure out a way how you can self motivate yourself, like me going every single morning down to the lake, I want to, I enjoy it. Like
Yeah.
it's not some people look at that going like, okay, hang on,
That sounds terrible.
a
Yeah.
little bit crazy for that. And actually, even yesterday, I just realized that I enjoy it. What I don't enjoy, like yesterday was a fairly cold. It was like minus 13 Fahrenheit, and
Yeah.
and I was running down. The hole that I cut out was completely covered with like a foot of drip of snow, and I'm like, okay, it's too cold. I'm gonna go home. I took the car and I went down there. But driving home, I was thinking, you know what? Going into the water that most people think, oh,
Mhm.
that's the easy part now. Like it doesn't make sense because it just becomes that habit. It's more or less the wind and everything that was happening yesterday because
Mhm.
yeah, it was quite cold. So I think even when it comes down with, with the numbers and how people are looking at it, how can you go and make it a little bit more fun? How can you make it a little bit more enjoyable? And because if you start thinking about it, you hate the numbers. Yeah, exactly. You're going to keep on hating the
You're gonna
numbers
keep
because you
hating it. Yeah.
keep on reinforcing that belief around that, right?
Yeah. It's true.
So
What's your goal of how many times you wanna cold plunge before you get your, reward?
So you know what? I just as we're talking about it, I don't have a reward. Last year I did it 6 months, like 182 days in a row, right? And this year I actually thought I was not going to go and do it. So I don't have a reward now, but my reward is every day, like the way that I feel and
Yeah.
everything from it. But I just thought about it. I'm like going, what is the goal? There
Mhm.
really is no goal. It just becomes like I'm going every single day that I have gone. But I was just thinking, yeah, I'm almost kind of halfway to 6 months, and what I was thinking about actually going like, I only do this in the winter. I do cold plunging in the winter. I'm like, maybe I'll need to buy a cold tub and do it
Oh, yeah. Put it
in
in
my
your
backyard to the rest of the
backyard.
year too. So maybe that's going to be the prize of that. So I was just thinking about it, going like, this is kind of crazy. I can only go for 6 months. That it kind of makes sense. Once it gets in the summer, the
Yeah.
water is warm. You don't get the same effect from it. So, but yeah, so we'll have to see what will happen with that.
That that'll be fun.
Yeah. And listen, as
Or
we
you
come in,
reward yourself, you get a sauna, so when you come back, you can
yeah,
warm up.
well, I do that too. I do
So
have
cool.
one of those smaller portable saunas that I
Yep.
do go after that. I used to go after I would go there, and I sit there for an hour just before I even start warming up. So it's like, no, 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 I do it a little bit later on in the day because
Mhm.
it's like I'm sitting here for hour and a half and nothing's happening because my body's just
So cold.
I'm trying to warm up. Listen, as we're coming to a close, I've got 4 rapid questions that I always ask. What's a
Okay.
favorite book that's shaped your thinking?
Oh, there's so many, but I think it would go back to the one that I mentioned, The Great Game of Business. That one I have used and referenced so many times, and I've implemented different strategies that he wrote about in it with a company I worked at. Um, yeah, it's been one of my favorites. So, The Great Game of Business by Jack Slack.
Okay, I'll have to check that out.
Check it
I've
out.
not
It's
read
a
that.
fun read too.
Yeah.
It's easy.
Yeah, awesome. Is there a morning routine or habit that you can live without?
A morning rou I have a terrible morning routine. I'm not a morning person, so, usually get up about 8:30. I'm I'm on the flip side, I'm the late nights. I like to work late at night when it's quiet, which is,
Yeah,
pretty opposite of everybody else that likes to get up, early in the morning when it's quiet to work. I'm
yeah,
just super creative in the evening.
yeah. I'm the same way. I'm trying to do it in the morning because I actually found out in the morning sometimes it feels like time still stands a little bit more still than in the
Yeah.
evening. But yeah, no, I totally understand that.
Yeah.
What's one bucket list item that you haven't done yet?
Oh, I really want to go to Australia.
Mm,
I have some friends that live there. I've just always wanted to go to see the ocean and the Great Barrier Reef, the Sydney Opera House, all of that.
yeah, that's one of the items on my bucket list
The
too. Yeah. So no, when we defected, we kind of well, my uncle was in Canada, that's why we went to Canada, but Australia was the other
the other
place
one.
to go to. It would be kind of weird where wherever you are, whatever season you're leaving, you're going to go to the opposite season when you
Mhm.
land there. I think that would be like crazy. I don't know
It
how can
would.
they do kind of Christmas without snow. That's kind of like a little bit weird. So
Yeah, it's different. I mean, I grew up, in California, and so how many times your Christmas tree was dead because it was 85 degrees, and it's funny moving to a place that had snow then, I'm like, "Oh, it's really inconvenient that it's snowing on Christmas, I can't go outside."
Interesting perspective, right? Just looking at it
Yeah,
from a little bit different view. I
just
haven't
kinda
thought
yeah,
about it that
flip
way.
it.
Yeah, flip that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a surprising hobby or interest that recharges you outside of work?
Running, that
Running?
is one of my favorite things to do. It's very relaxing for me, which I think is probably kind of funny too.
Yeah,
Some people hate running with a passion, but I'll just go run and I come back after, an hour or so and yeah, feel super re-energized to tackle the rest of the day.
yeah. Oh, that's great. Now,
Yeah.
I've got one last question. I call it a hot one. Fast forward to the end of your life and imagine that everyone forgot everything that you ever taught them or you showed them,
Mhm.
but they do remember one message from you. What would you want that message to be?
Oh, that's a good question. Hmm. I think it would be always dream big.
Yeah.
Don't limit yourself because the world tells you to limit yourself.
Uh, Keep what is yours and break free from the systems. Yeah,
Mhm.
no, that's
That's what it's
perfect.
all about. Yeah.
Listen, what a powerful and perspective shifting conversation, Kristy. Thank you for sharing your journey.
Yeah,
Where
thank
can
you.
people find out more about you and the work that you do?
Yeah, so feel free to look me up, KristyBarber.com, the website, email me, Kristy@KristyBarber.com, or find me on any of my socials. Happy to chat with anybody and help you out if you need any help.
Perfect. So, hey, if you're listening, check out Kristy's website and resources. We're going to have the links in the show notes. Kristy, thank you again for your time and your message. And
Yeah.
remember, making life less taxing isn't about money, it's about freedom, clarity, and purpose. Keep building wealth, keep protecting your legacy, and keep living the untaxable lifestyle. We'll see you next time on the Make Life Less Taxing podcast.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Make Life Less Taxing podcast. Be sure to check out our other top advisor interviews at makelifelesstaxingpodcast.com.